You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Thanks for coming on the Legacy Stories podcast. Today we're going to be speaking with Stephen Kirschenbaum, who's associated with the firm Gipson, Hoffman, and Pancione. And just for our viewers and listeners' information, we're here in beautiful Southern California, where it's been kind of raining the last couple of weeks, but normally beautiful, like the background behind me. And Steve, I really want to thank you for coming on and providing some insights for the viewers and listeners of Legacy Podcast Stories.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, excellent. So one of the questions that I'm always interested in when we're interviewing attorneys is why, how did you first get into law, and how did you first get into estate planning? What attracted you to the area to begin with, and estate planning in general, or in particular?
That's a good question. How did I first get into law? I'm trying to think back. I remember when I was in undergrad, I was thinking about what I wanted to do. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't exactly sure. And I thought to myself, maybe I should go to law school, get a law degree. And the law degree is universally good and it's universally accepted. So even if I wanted to go into business or whatever else, it's always good to know the law and know the rules on the books and to have a law degree. So I figured, let me go to law school and see what happens. And also I enjoyed, what is associated with law school, like, logic and reasoning and things like that. I felt like I could be decent at that as well. So I figured I should go to law school. And then once I was in law school, I took a number of courses. I always heard about the notion of estate planning. What always attracted me to estate planning, estate administration, trust and estates, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that there's a personal element and there is a professional, strategic, legal element to it as well. I would imagine a lot of estate planning lawyers speak of this, but I honestly feel it as well. From the personal level, you're dealing with people, dealing with families, you're dealing with issues and questions that hit very close to home. It's deeply personal, right? Whether it be you're dealing with family or you're dealing with people's money, people's assets, right? I remember, I'm gonna crack a joke now, I hope you don't mind, I hope I'm allowed. I remember, I like sports, and I remember back in the day, there was a wide receiver, I think he's a Hall of Famer, he should be, if he's not, Chris Carter. And I heard an interview with him once, and he said something like, wide receivers are only about two things, me and my money. So that's all they care about, me and my money. That's all we care about. So when it comes to, you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with people, their family, and their money, and their assets. And, depending on what they do for a living, how they hold their assets, the nature of these assets, whether, they have a business, they have membership interests, they have investments, they're a professional, they're a doctor, they're a CPA, they're a lawyer, they're in the tech industry, the gamut. So all these people can have all different types of holdings, and, there is a lot of strategy involved in maximizing their estate plans, protecting their assets, and ultimately accomplishing what their goals are. So, you meet with them and you have to, from my standpoint, I'd have to navigate the family dynamics. So a lot of times a husband and wife will come to see me and they might want to end up at point A, but how they get there, they very much disagree. And so it's up to me to kind of navigate those dynamics and ultimately satisfy both the husband and the wife with their plans. And obviously where there are kids, or there are other family members or charities or whatever else involved that people feel really strongly about, it's an important thing. When you're dealing with their assets, like I was saying before, I guess, there's a lot of strategy involved. And I work in a firm. It's not a trust and estates firm. I work in the trust and estates department in the firm, but we're a business law firm. Every attorney here specializes in a specific area. And so I very often collaborate with, attorneys in the business transactions, corporate formations, departments, real estate, intellectual property, litigation, whatever it is. Trust and estates kind of, branches out depending on the client to all different types of areas of law. And so I very much enjoy it. I enjoy the personable side of things where you really have to interact with people and get to the crux of what they want to do. And you got to really get to know some of these people. And frankly, no pun intended, because it's trust and estates, but if you do a decent job for them, they really come to trust you. And whenever, like, I have clients calling me up when any kind of legal need comes up, and I'm saying to myself, I'm like, why in the world do you think I would know the answer to this question? But frankly, I either I can refer them to somebody internally within my firm, if they, depending on their need, or to a contact of mine that could really help them out. And very often they just want me to stay in the loop and to kind of walk them through it. So yeah, I mean, that's why I really do enjoy the estate planning, the trust and estates, the practicing that area of law specifically as an attorney.
Excellent, excellent. And you mentioned the whole firm, which is great. That way, if somebody needs help in another area, or maybe more credit protection or whatever else, you've got experts and specialists that you can consult with. So I'm kind of curious, how did you end up at Gipson, Hoffman and Pancione? Has that been your only firm, or was that kind of a story there as well?
Well, I'm actually from, I was actually raised I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, northern New Jersey in Bergen County, if anybody knows or is from there, any of the listeners. And I was living in the New York, New Jersey area until about 2016, when I moved out to Los Angeles. And I landed in Los Angeles at Gipson, Hoffman and Pancione here at the firm that I'm at now. How I ended up in Gipson, Hoffman and Pancione, I had a contact out in LA. I met with them, and then they introduced me to a lawyer at Gipson, Hoffman and Pancione. We hit it off, and then she introduced me to the managing partner and some other partners. And before I knew it, I was working at Gipson, Hoffman and Pancione, and I was building the trust and estates department here. Revitalizing it, I should say.
Excellent. Sounds awesome. And they're certainly a well-known established firm here in Los Angeles, and I'm sure nationwide as well, but especially here in LA. So Steve, I'm kind of curious, within this area of financial legacy planning and financial planning and estate planning, what would you say is your a picture of your ideal client?
Well, my ideal client is one that is communicative and responsive and is understanding. But in terms of kind of like a checklist of things, in terms of my ideal client, honestly, I mean, in terms of like net worth, is that what you're asking me? In terms of industry, like what they do for a living, I would say that our bread and butter, our clients, we range from the basic estate planning clients, meaning below the exemption amount of, if it's a husband and wife, about 25 million at this point, to range, through 50 to 60 million or 50 to 100 million. And then we also have clients over the 100 million mark and significantly over the 100 million mark, right? So it all varies. But again, the higher the net worth, the more that I can do for this client, but also that my firm can do for this client as well, depending on their needs, And so very often clients really enjoy, but I think they appreciate working with me and working with my firm, because it's all under one umbrella. It's all under one firm, and everybody works well together, and we collaborate very often. And we really are able to service the client in a exemplary way and efficient way. From my standpoint, yeah, I mean, the net worth, I don't have like an ideal client. With a basic estate planning client, meaning let's say you have a young kid, a young couple, and they're growing. professionally and their family, whatever. So very often I grow with them. Like I've had clients who came to me in 2017, and I mean, it hasn't been that long, but they're getting more and more successful, and we're doing more and more things for them. They come back whenever they need anything, and they want to whether it be to update their estate plan or to implement more sophisticated estate planning documents and whatever else it is. So, some firms I think have kind of like a minimum. We don't do that. I like to try to help people also. I enjoy that aspect of it as well. And I think I'm a big believer that if you're decent to people, no matter what their net worth is, good things happen.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I'm glad you said about, whether it's 100 million or 1 or 2 million, there's still some very important things that have to be done. And if they're not done, lead to all kinds of.
Yeah, I mean, it should be said that out here in LA, if you own your home, I mean, obviously I'm not talking about like debt on the home or whatever, but straight up, you're a millionaire. You're not going to find a home in LA for under $1 million.
I just tell people all the time, if you have a home or you have kids or you have
an estate,
a little bit of money, at least, the basics need to be covered, because otherwise it's gonna, God forbid, be in probate or any other kind of things. Steve, one of the things that I've found when I've been talking to attorneys that having to do with legacy stories, that their clients seem to see, or the lawyer already has kind of a special talent or a special thing, or kind of something that's unique to them. Now, I happen to know, because when we were talking, that you're Jewish, and we talked about some of the things that are specifically Jewish about estate planning and legacy planning. But first, before I get into that, I wanted to kind of ask you if what you think your special talent or your unique special ability that you might bring to the table when you're helping people do their estate planning.
That's a good question. I never really think about what my special talent is, but what I would say is, I think is that what I think I'm decent at is, talking through with the client and really, really honing in, like getting through the weeds, getting to the forest, seeing the forest through the trees kind of thing, and really getting down to like the issue, pinpointing what the real issue is. And once you could pinpoint what the base foundational fundamental issue is that's going on, that's when you could, grow out of it and move forward. I think that's like, I think I'm pretty decent at that. And, I realize like, when like I've hit the nail on the head is when you kind of see kind of like that light bulb go off with the clients, whether it be dealing with like a company of theirs or, trying to figure out what the best distribution scheme is, or like, they have a problem with this, they don't have a problem with that, they don't know how to do this, they don't know how to do that. Then I said, well, why don't we do X? And then in any of these situations, it could be dealt with. And they're like, oh, wow, that's actually perfect. And so I think that, I guess that's something that I bring to the table.
Got it. And what would you say are misconceptions about estate planning that people have, like,
well,
they have when they come in and they say, oh, I thought it would be this and it's not.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, there are a couple. Number one, we kind of mentioned it before in passing, that you have to be like a multi-millionaire to have an estate. That is not true. You have a child, you need to have documents in place. You own a home, or you have any assets, you need to have an estate plan in place. You really, really should. And it's important. And there are a lot of horror stories out there where people operate under that assumption. They don't have anything in place, and it really is very, very difficult down the road. That's one misconception. Another, I don't want to say this is a misconception, but I think the obstacle to estate planning is, I think people just assume, oh, nobody likes thinking about their own mortality. I don't know if that's the case. I think everybody knows that at some point they're gonna pass on. And frankly, given the circumstances, I think they'd rather pass on first before their kids, right? So, when dealing with the issue of their mortality, Some people get anxious about that and they just don't want to deal with anything, no matter how wealthy they are. Like I have clients that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't even have a will. They have nothing. Well, they're not clients. They're people I've met with. So that's another one. Like, oh yeah, my kids will figure it out. I said, yeah, but if you like deal with it now, you know how much easier you're making life for your kids. Not to mention how much more money they're going to have if you deal with it now than if you don't do anything. But I actually do think the number one obstacle for estate planning is I think that people think that it's something that they need to deal with, but they don't look at it as a need that they need to deal with today. They're like, oh yeah, I'll do it soon. I'll do it soon. I'll get around to it. And they kind of kick the can down the road, and a month goes by, a year goes by, 5 years go by, 10 years go by. And then at some point, either, you know, someone they know has a crazy issue with like estate planning, or their estates, you know, someone they know died and it's a disaster, or it's not a disaster and they see how smooth it went, or, you know, someone got sick, or, you know, something happens where it's kind of like the proverbial kick in the pants to them, like, oh my gosh, I got to get this done now. So, and sometimes it's too late. And so people don't think of it as an immediate need. They don't think of it as something they need to do right now or today. And if they don't need to do it today, it's very difficult to get around to doing it, unless something happens. So I think that's the number one impediment for people to getting their estate plans done, no matter how wealthy they are. It doesn't matter. You know, it's that mindset, like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And I don't want to say they procrastinate, because I'm sure they're very, very busy in their lives, but it's something that people really should ensure that they get done. And once they get it done, it's not, you know, the mindset shouldn't be, okay, I did it, because I've had people who someone was in my office the other day. They're like, oh yeah, we're here. I don't really know what the impetus was for them to come to see me. I didn't ask them that, but like, but we already have an estate plan. I said, oh yeah, when do you, oh, they were a client of the firm and one of the attorneys wanted me to meet with them to discuss something. So I said, do you have an estate plan? Do you have a trust? So they're like, yeah, we have a trust. I said, okay. I'm like, when was the last time you revisited it? They said, well, we haven't revisited it since we implemented it. I said, when did you implement it? 1998. I'm like, 1998. I'm like, that was literally last century. So I said, I'm not saying you have to redo anything, but just kind of make sure that, you know, the trustees, that successor trustees that you've designated are still ones that you want. Maybe you know, your kids are older now, you want to change it around a little bit. Just let me know. And they literally emailed me yesterday. They're like, the successor trustees that we've designated, we have two, one after the other. They're both dead. What do we do? I'm like, we have to update your estate plan, your trust. And so we're doing a whole overhaul of everything, from the trust to powers of attorney, healthcare directives. Their kids are older now, in their 30s, whatever. So it's going to be a whole new estate plan. But they just assume, no, we're done. We're all good. Everything is set. And it's not always the case. Sometimes it is, but it's not always like that.
It was always good to check. For those of you who are listening and don't have the direct experience, Stephen just touched on, I think, one of the most critical aspects. I've seen it in other legacy planning. I've seen it with my own friends and family. I've seen it, well, not so much family, but other things. Is that and the whole idea is that even if you have a basic plan, which a lot of people have, when was it last updated? You know, if that was in my case, and I'll be the first one to say it was like over 10 years ago, a lot has changed. And it definitely needs to be, you know, updated. And so if you're in the same, you know, boat, you know, don't put it off. You don't know when things are going to happen. And, you know, every couple of years, you know, update it, because in today's world, so many different things change. You know, people get born, people die, your wishes on how you might want to have things done. And the more you can do it and get used to doing it, and the more detailed you can get about what you want, the better the better it's going to be. I've seen families fight over, you know, who gets the china, and if one of those, you know, part of the things we do with legacy is write all these things down, make it very clear, you know, what your wishes are, because you can't do it after you die, and you can't do it, you know, and it's not good to do it as you're dying. So, you know, and it's like taking care of your health, right? It's one of those things, you may not like it, you may not want to face it, but you definitely should do it. So, I thank you for bringing that point up, because it's something that we with the legacy stories and legacy planning, you know, see all the time, and it's not always a good thing. Speaking of it not always being a good thing, can you tell me a story of a situation where they either didn't do the planning, or the planning was so outdated or poor that it was kind of a disaster, and then you found out about it too late?
Yeah, sure. How much time do we have now? I'm joking, but yeah, I can tell you a story for sure. Okay, this is a pretty extreme one, but I guess it drives the point home. We had a client come to us, a widow, right? Her husband passed away. They were married for, I think they got married, if I remember correctly, in like 1978, right? Husband passed away. He was a lawyer. He had his own firm. He had double-digit attorneys working under him in his office, in his firm, a number of staff, support staff, everything. Like, it was a legitimate operation. They had, if I remember correctly, 11 kids, give or take. I think it was 11, and very, very, very nice, sweet woman. And from what I understand, the husband was amazing. They not only had 0 estate planning documents in order, but everything was titled in his name and his name alone. It wasn't, you know, Joe and Mary as a married couple as community property or whatever, jointly, nothing. It was literally just in his name, everything. From the law firm being like a DBA, to the accounts, to everything. And a high net worth, substantial, very substantial. They had investments, they had properties. And it was so difficult. I mean, this is a person who, you know, again, substantial assets, substantial net worth, and she couldn't withdraw money just to like do for her daily living because everything was in his name. We needed to get a court order for everything. And at one point she called me from the bank. She was crying. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't get any money out. And like, it was driving her crazy. You know, it was just, she was at her wit's end. Thankfully, you know, we had to go to court, and I work with, collaborate with probate attorneys here, trust litigators and probate attorneys. We were able to file the appropriate petitions, both for certain accounts, for the assets, for the law firm, because she's not a lawyer. She can't be the practice administrator of the law firm, so that was a whole other thing. So it took a lot of time, a lot of patience in terms of the courts. Thankfully, it worked out ultimately, but it was very difficult for her the whole way through. And, you know, she was obviously kind of kicking herself that like she should have really ensured that this happened, that they would have prepared and planned properly. Just had like just forget like sophisticated estate planning, just the basic estate planning documents in place, at least, just to enable her to be able to live after he passes, you know. And so it was a very difficult. I felt so bad for her. Everybody did, you know. But we were working hard for her, and we ultimately got it done. And once things kind of calmed down, and the wheels were in motion, and everything, we implemented the estate plan for her. That was like the first thing she wanted to do. She did not want her kids to experience what she had to experience. And so we worked with her, we worked with her kids, and, you know, thankfully everything is all good now, but it was very difficult. Very
And maybe
difficult.
one of those life lessons, right, to teach the next generation and the next generation. Like, if nothing else, take care of that.
But,
And here was a successful attorney, right? Here was a very successful attorney. You would think
that was
if
the
anybody,
point.
you would think a CPA or a planner or a a successful attorney would be
Well,
the first ones to recognize that they needed to do.
right. I mean, in fairness, you know, he didn't practice estate planning or trust in estates. He practiced an area that has not much to do with trusts or estate. I mean, I'm sure he's come across trust, but
Right,
you know, like it wasn't like the focus on his head. Like I deal with estate planning every day and trust in estates. I can't imagine he did based on his area. So, you know, in fairness, but you know, still, yeah. I mean, especially, I mean, he didn't have a ton of time once like he found it, like it took a turn for the worse. But they should, you know, it could have been, I don't, I don't want to say it could have been avoided, but you know, if somebody would have kind of really pushed for it, it would have been a lot easier. But then I also had we averted a bit of a catastrophe also. I don't know if that was your next question, but this is actually a good story, I guess. We had a husband and wife come to me. I had a husband and wife come to me. The husband was diagnosed with a particular form of cancer, but it was looking good, but they were older. They had an estate plan in place a while ago. It was a pretty complex trust, and they kind of wanted to simplify everything for the surviving spouse, right? So I said, okay, no problem. Met with them, exchanged some emails, you know, we were communicating and whatever, and just ironing out all the details, fine. Then I get an email from the wife that the husband had to go to the hospital a day or two prior. He's not doing great, but hopefully it'll be okay, and I'll keep you posted. I said, okay, you know, let me know if you need anything. In the meantime, you know, we'll draft everything that we spoke about and things like that. And then I think like the next day or 2 days later, she's like, he's really not doing well. He's taking a turn for the worse. You know, I don't know how I'm going to survive, and you know, all these different things. And so I called her and I spoke to her, and I said, we're going to get this done for you. Don't worry about it. You know, it's all good. That was on late Friday. On Sunday morning, I emailed her just to find out what's going on with her husband. And she's like, nothing has changed, but because nothing has changed, that's worse in terms of how it is. So I remember when I got the email back from her, it was on a Sunday morning, late Sunday morning. I was at the Santa Monica Pier with my kids and some other family members, and I'm like, I got to go to the office. Like, I don't want to take any chances. And I worked until, you know, later that evening. I sent her documents. I was talking to her on the phone a little bit. I mean, when she was able to. And I sent her the documents late that Sunday night. And the next morning, I went with my paralegal, who's a notary, to Cedar Sinai, or a coffee shop right near Cedar Sinai. And we implemented everything. There was one hiccup because I realized that, you know, he's unable to, he was in a hospital bed. How is he going to sign an amendment to their trust or a restatement to their trust? And so I looked at the trust as was, and I also looked at their powers of attorney. And thankfully, it authorized the power of attorney to make an amendment to the trust, to their trust. And so I had her sign as trustee of, and grantor of the trust, and I had her sign as his power of attorney. And so we were able to get that done. That was at 11 a.m. on Monday morning when I met her in that coffee shop. At 2 o'clock, she sent me an email that he passed away.
wow.
Yeah, pretty wild. Pretty wild. And you know, she was very thankful because it would have been very, very difficult for her, the way that the trust was set up from 2002 or whatever it was. And you know, thankfully, I mean, obviously he passed away, and that's horrible. But I think it was a big weight off of her shoulders, the way that we were able to do it for her. And you know, I mean, this was a couple of weeks ago. So she just emailed me yesterday, and I said, take your time, whatever. We'll start dealing with the administration or whatever else when you're ready. You know, take some time, because she's still, you know, kind of sorting everything out. But that was something where you know, obviously it's not a great situation, but we were able to kind of make it a little better for her and avoid a lot of frustration and difficulties.
That's kind of a good story, or a good version of where they at least they did it, but maybe just in the nick of time. And kudos to you for working on for late at night and on a Sunday.
Well, I didn't want,
Might not
I
have
didn't,
been
I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be an issue in this situation, you know, I didn't
If it
want
had only
to.
been for our attorney, if he had only done the right thing on Sunday night or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
exactly.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know,
I would have felt pretty bad, to be honest.
you never know. And even if somebody's healthy, I remember a friend of mine, and then he'd gotten remarried and hadn't even changed the will. I mean, this is like the classic, went to the gym, had a heart attack and died. So it doesn't
Yeah,
even have, you
that's
don't
happened
always get
also. Yeah,
even the notice that you had, or even the chance to do it on a Sunday or that night or the 11 o'clock in the morning. So kudos to you for for being that caring of an attorney. That's awesome. So in the time we have left, a couple other questions that I'm kind of curious about, and you may have touched on this, but as you do the estate planning for people, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you face in trying to put things together and trying to have people understand their options and their choices?
well, I think that's what it is, getting them to understand their options and choices, and embracing it, right? And, so it's on me to break it down for them and to communicate it properly. I guess that's what I kind of touched upon before when you asked me about like a strength or something of mine. So it's kind of really like breaking it down and explaining it to the very, very smart layperson, meaning not a lawyer, what the issues are and what we can do to maximize their goals and to, ultimately, accomplish what their goals are. Now, sometimes, different people have different priorities. So you have to listen to the client, right? Sometimes they're all about asset protection. Sometimes they're all about tax planning. Sometimes they're all about, familial harmony, and they don't care about anything else, no matter how many assets or whatever it is that they have. It all depends on, it all depends on that. Sorry, my phone is ringing, but yeah, so I think, breaking it down, getting them to kind of listen and to understand what the issues are, and then working with them to figure out a solution.
Got it. And I think on my last question, I think you've already touched on this, but and my idea is what do you like best about what you do and what you're able to help family? I think you touched on it a little bit, and certainly in the successful story that's definitely there. But if there's anything else that you like about what you do and what satisfies you about the work you do for your clients.
I enjoy the client interactions, and again, navigating all the social, the family issues, or the or their balance sheets and everything like that, and trying and so I enjoy that, but I also enjoy the strategy and coming up with solutions that is satisfactory to everybody, right? To everybody involved. And there are so many ways that you can go about things, and like the more creative, the more fun, I guess. And yeah, again, each client is different in terms of what they do for a living, how they've made their money, what their priorities are, who the players are involved, whatever it is. Also, it depends on how the client comes to me. I'll work with a CPA, a financial advisor, and they'll run the show, and I'll just, be the lawyer drafting the documents, or they'll basically say, you run the show and I'll just listen in, or anything in between. And so I'm always happy to kind of just like work with people to ultimately just benefit the client. That's what we're here for.
Got it. And one last question. We both happen to be Jewish, and I know a lot of people that listen to the podcast, are Jewish also. Is there any aspect of estate planning that is kind of particular to the Judaism that you're able to see and include, that maybe the next attorney, as well as knowledgeable and as great as they might be, might not concern themselves with, that would also be important to a family?
Yeah, I mean, there are Yes, there definitely are issues to address when it comes to estate planning from the Jewish perspective and the Jewish law. There are some documents that a person can implement that just kind of supplements their estate plan, their trust, their powers of attorney, their portable wills, whatever it is. But there are documents in place to kind of ensure that their estate plan is consistent with Jewish law as well. And I offer that as well. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to break it down and explain what exactly the document is there for and what it's doing. But yeah, I do the Jewish estate planning as well. But the Jewish estate planning is, estate planning and then some of these other documents.
Got it. No, that sounds awesome. Just for the people that might also happen to be Jewish, I think that's a critical thing. And I know there's all kinds of little details, and they would probably appreciate knowing there are people like you that can help them put it all together, even on a religious aspect. And that also comes up in legacy planning, where there's some religious and moral and guidance kind of issues that the people are trying to pass on along with their their money and their assets and their and their legal choices. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But before I do, I want to ask you, where can people most easily find you if they especially like this particular podcast and want to contact you or Gipson, Hoffman, and Pancione for this type of work?
Well, yeah, easiest way, you could just go onto our website, ghplaw.com, and you can go onto my page. My email is there, skirschenbaum@ghplaw.com. Phone number is 310-556-4660. But yeah, I think it's pretty easy to get in touch with me, just based on a simple Google search or whatever it is also. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody and help anybody out, whether, no matter how small or big.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the Legacy Podcast Stories. And
Thank you.
This will be up in the cloud and available for everybody for as long as the cloud exists and or new technology takes over. So we really appreciate your being a part of the program, and I'm sure it's going to help many people as a result. So so thank you very much for that.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.